When people think of the United States, they picture modern infrastructure, clean water, stable housing, and opportunity. But there's another side of America, one that rarely makes national headlines. Entire towns where basic services barely function, where jobs disappeared decades ago, where homes don't sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, they sell for the price of a used car. We're talking $23,000 houses. And no, this isn't because these homes are hidden gems. It's because in some parts of the country, living conditions have collapsed to levels most Americans would never expect inside U.S. borders. In these towns, water systems are failing, roads are crumbling, hospitals are miles away or permanently closed. Grocery stores vanish, leaving residents in food deserts. Crime rises not because people want it to, but because economic opportunity vanished and never came back. This isn't poverty in theory, it's poverty in practice. Watch closely, because a few of these towns sit right next to areas booming with growth. The contrast is jarring, and it raises a serious question. How many more places are heading in the same direction? Before we start, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. These stories matter, and the more people see them, the harder they become to ignore. Now let's begin. 1. Gary, Indiana. Homes selling for $20,000 to $30,000. Gary, Indiana was once a symbol of American industrial power. Built around U.S. steel, it boomed in the mid-20th century. Jobs were plentiful, wages were strong, neighborhoods were packed with working families. Then the industry collapsed, and Gary never recovered. Today, Gary feels less like a struggling U.S. city and more like a post-industrial ghost zone. The population has dropped by more than half since its peak. Entire blocks are abandoned. Homes sit open to the elements, stripped for copper or slowly collapsing. In some neighborhoods, more houses are vacant than occupied. That's why homes sell for $23,000 or less, sometimes far less. Infrastructure is one of the biggest failures. Roads are riddled with potholes. Streetlights don't always work. Public services are stretched thin because the tax base collapsed along with the population. When people leave, funding disappears. When funding disappears, conditions worsen. It's a vicious cycle. Water quality has been a recurring concern. Aging pipes, limited maintenance budgets, and environmental contamination from decades of heavy industry have created long-term health risks. Access to healthcare is another problem. Hospitals have closed or downsized, forcing residents to travel long distances for basic care. Employment opportunities are scarce. The jobs that replaced steel never came close to matching wages or volume. Many residents rely on low-pay service work, government assistance, or informal income. For younger people, the options are limited. Stay and struggle, or leave if you can afford to. Crime is not the cause of Gary's collapse. It's a symptom. When opportunity disappears, desperation grows. Emergency response times are longer. Police resources are limited. Entire neighborhoods feel forgotten. And yet, people still live here. Not because it's cheap, but because leaving costs money. Moving requires savings, transportation, and opportunity elsewhere. Many residents are trapped by poverty, age, or family obligations. Gary is the clearest example of how a once powerful American city can fall so far that housing prices become meaningless. A $23,000 home isn't a bargain when basic services, safety, and opportunity are missing. 2. Flint, Michigan. Homes selling for $15,000 to $30,000. Flint, Michigan should never have ended up here. Once a cornerstone of America's auto industry, Flint was built by General Motors and powered the middle class for generations. Then the factories closed, and the collapse began. But what pushed Flint into national disgrace wasn't just job loss. It was infrastructure failure. The Flint water crisis exposed something deeply uncomfortable. In parts of the United States, clean drinking water is not guaranteed. Lead contamination poisoned an entire community. Trust in government collapsed. Health outcomes worsened. And the damage wasn't temporary. It's generational. That legacy still hangs over the city in 2026. Homes in Flint sell for shockingly low prices because demand never returned. Buyers don't just see cheap houses. They see risk, aging pipes, uncertain water safety, underfunded schools, limited job opportunities, and a city still trying to rebuild credibility. Entire neighborhoods are dotted with vacant homes and empty lots. Some streets feel partially abandoned. Property values are so low that taxes barely fund basic services. That means fewer repairs, fewer police, fewer programs, and slower recovery. Healthcare access is strained. Many residents deal with long-term health impacts from lead exposure, yet medical resources are limited. Grocery stores are scarce in some areas, creating food deserts where residents rely on convenience stores for daily nutrition. Jobs remain a core problem. Manufacturing never returned at scale. Replacement industries brought fewer positions and lower wages. Young people leave as soon as they can. Those who stay often do so because they don't have the means to leave. Like Gary, Flint's low housing prices aren't an opportunity. They're a warning. A $23,000 home may look attractive on paper, but ownership comes with costs that don't show up in listings: infrastructure risk, health concerns, and economic isolation. Flint proves that when systems fail, water, governance, employment, housing values don't just fall, they collapse. 3. Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Homes selling for $20,000 to $30,000. Pine Ridge, South Dakota sits on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and its conditions expose one of the most severe humanitarian crises inside the United States. This isn't a town that fell apart from industry leaving. This is a place that was never given the tools to thrive in the first place. Housing prices are shockingly low because demand is nearly non-existent. Many homes lack proper insulation, plumbing, or heating. Overcrowding is common, with multiple generations sharing small, deteriorating structures. Some homes are unlivable by modern standards, yet people live in them because there is nowhere else to go. Infrastructure is deeply inadequate. Roads are poorly maintained. Public transportation is limited. Emergency response times are long. Access to clean water and consistent utilities can be unreliable in certain areas. Internet access, now essential for education and employment, is spotty or unavailable for many residents. Unemployment rates are among the highest in the nation. Job opportunities are scarce, and those that exist often pay very little. With limited industry, economic mobility is nearly impossible. Many residents rely on federal aid just to survive. Healthcare access is another major crisis. Hospitals are distant, underfunded, or overwhelmed. Life expectancy in the area is dramatically lower than the national average. Substance abuse and mental health challenges are widespread, driven by generational trauma, poverty, and isolation. Education systems struggle as well. Schools are underfunded and understaffed. Graduation rates lag far behind national averages, making it even harder for younger generations to escape the cycle. Homes selling for $23,000 here aren't distressed investments. They reflect conditions that mirror developing world hardship. Pine Ridge is proof that extreme poverty exists in America, hidden far from financial centers and suburban comfort. 4. Cairo, Illinois. Homes selling for $10,000 to $25,000. Cairo, Illinois sits at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. On paper, it should have been a logistics and trade hub. Instead, it's one of the most economically devastated towns in the Midwest. Cairo's population has collapsed by more than 80% from its peak. As residents left, businesses closed. As businesses closed, jobs vanished. What remains is a town with massive vacancy, decaying buildings, and almost no private investment. Homes sell for as little as $10,000 because there are few buyers. Entire blocks are empty. Some houses are beyond repair. Others are structurally sound, but sit in neighborhoods with no grocery stores, no pharmacies, and limited police presence. Flood risk is constant. Aging levees and climate pressure add another layer of uncertainty. Insurance is expensive or unavailable, making homeownership even less attractive. Public services struggle to function. With a shrinking tax base, the city has cut back on everything from maintenance to staffing. Schools have closed. Hospitals are limited. Residents often drive long distances for basic needs. Crime, once rampant, has decreased mainly because so few people remain. But safety concerns still linger, especially at night. Streetlights don't always work. Emergency response can be slow. Cairo feels frozen in time. Abandoned storefronts, boarded windows, and silence where activity once existed. A $23,000 home here doesn't represent opportunity. It represents a town that lost its economic purpose and never found a replacement. Cairo is a warning about what happens when geography alone isn't enough to sustain a community. 5. McDowell County, West Virginia. Homes selling for $15,000 to $25,000. McDowell County isn't just struggling, it's collapsing in slow motion. Once one of the richest counties in America thanks to coal, it's now one of the poorest. When coal left, almost everything else followed. The population has fallen by nearly 80% since its peak. Entire towns inside the county are hollowed out. Schools have closed. Grocery stores vanished. Hospitals shut their doors. What remains are scattered residents living among abandoned buildings and collapsing infrastructure. Homes sell for $23,000 here because demand is virtually zero. You can buy a house, but you can't buy opportunity. Jobs are extremely limited. Many residents rely on disability checks, social security, or informal work just to survive. Younger people leave the moment they can. Those who stay often do so because they're elderly, sick, or financially trapped. Infrastructure is failing across the county. Roads are crumbling. Internet access is unreliable or non-existent in many areas, making remote work impossible. Water systems are old and poorly maintained. In some communities, boil water advisories are routine. Healthcare access is one of the biggest crises. Residents often drive over an hour for basic medical care. Emergency response times are long, and chronic illness rates are high. Substance abuse, especially opioids, has devastated families for years, with limited treatment resources available. McDowell County feels cut off from modern America, not because of geography alone, but because investment stopped decades ago. A $20,000 home here reflects a brutal reality. Cheap housing means nothing when there's no economy to support life around it. 6. Selma, Alabama. Homes selling for $20,000 to $30,000. Selma is known nationally for its role in civil rights history, but today it's better known locally for economic decline. Once a regional hub, Selma has steadily lost population, businesses, and investment over the last several decades. Homes sell for $23,000 because demand has dried up. Many properties sit vacant for years. Entire neighborhoods show visible decay, boarded-up homes, overgrown lots, and crumbling infrastructure. The job market is thin. Manufacturing and industrial employers left long ago. Replacement jobs never came at scale. Many residents work low-wage service positions or commute long distances. Poverty rates remain extremely high. Healthcare access is limited. Hospital closures and underfunding have left residents with fewer options and longer travel times for care. Preventable health issues are common, driven by poverty, poor access, and limited education resources. Public schools struggle with chronic underfunding. Graduation rates lag behind state averages. This fuels a cycle where young people leave if they can, and the tax base erodes further. Infrastructure problems are everywhere. Aging water systems, poor road conditions, and inconsistent city services make daily life harder. When storms hit, recovery is slow. When systems fail, there's little backup. Crime isn't the defining feature, but economic stress creates instability. Law enforcement resources are stretched thin. Residents report slow response times and limited city capacity. Selma's housing prices reflect more than market conditions. They reflect decades of disinvestment. A $25,000 home isn't a steal. It's a signal that the local economy no longer supports growth or stability. Selma shows how historic importance doesn't guarantee a sustainable future. 7. Camden, New Jersey. Homes selling for $20,000 to $30,000. Camden, New Jersey sits directly across the Delaware River from Philadelphia, one of the fastest reviving cities on the East Coast. From the waterfront, you can literally see investment, cranes, and rising property values. But step a few blocks inland, and Camden tells a completely different story, one that feels disconnected from modern America. Camden was once a manufacturing powerhouse. Shipbuilding, food processing, and heavy industry provided stable, unionized jobs for decades. Entire neighborhoods were built around these employers. When deindustrialization hit in the late 20th century, Camden lost its economic backbone almost overnight. Factories closed, jobs vanished, the middle class moved out. What followed wasn't just decline, it was abandonment. Today, population loss defines the city. Camden has lost more than half its residents since its peak. Entire neighborhoods emptied out, leaving behind blocks of vacant homes. Some houses remain structurally intact, yet no one wants them. That's why homes sell for $23,000. Not because they're hidden gems, but because buyers don't believe the area will recover. Vacancy creates a chain reaction. Empty homes attract vandalism, fires, and decay. Property values sink further. The tax base shrinks. City services weaken. Roads go unrepaired. Streetlights fail. Trash pickup becomes inconsistent. Residents who remain feel forgotten. Infrastructure in Camden is visibly strained. Roads are uneven and potholed. Aging sewer and water systems struggle under limited maintenance budgets. Flooding during heavy rain is common in low-lying areas. Utility reliability varies block by block. Crime has long shaped Camden's national image. While crime rates have improved over the years due to policing reforms, perception lags behind reality. For buyers and investors, perception matters more than statistics. Fear keeps demand low, regardless of improvements. Education remains a critical challenge. Public schools suffer from underfunding and instability, Families with resources move to surrounding suburbs or across the river to Pennsylvania. That drains the city of income, political influence, and future growth potential. Healthcare access is uneven. Large hospitals exist nearby, but many residents lack reliable transportation or insurance. Preventive care is often delayed until conditions worsen. Chronic illness rates are high, fueled by poverty, stress, and limited access to healthy food. Camden's location should be a blessing. Instead, it highlights inequality. Just minutes from prosperity, Camden remains trapped by decades of disinvestment, governance challenges, and economic exclusion. A $23,000 home in Camden isn't cheap housing. It's a reflection of risk, stagnation, and uncertainty. And until sustained private investment reaches beyond a few showcase developments, prices are unlikely to rise meaningfully. 8. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Homes selling for $15,000 to $25,000. Pine Bluff, Arkansas once stood as a regional economic center in the Deep South. Timber, agriculture, railroads, and manufacturing provided steady employment for generations. For decades, Pine Bluff was a place where working families could build stable lives. That era is long gone. As industries declined or automated, Pine Bluff lost its economic anchors. Jobs disappeared slowly at first, then all at once. Younger residents left in search of opportunity. Businesses followed them out. What remained was a shrinking population and an economy unable to replace what was lost. Today, Pine Bluff's population has fallen sharply, and the effects are visible everywhere. Entire neighborhoods sit half-empty. Vacant homes dot nearly every street. Some houses are structurally sound but surrounded by abandonment. Others are deteriorating rapidly, stripped for materials or collapsing from neglect. Homes sell for $23,000 because demand is nearly non-existent. Buyers aren't competing, they're avoiding. Cheap housing doesn't attract newcomers when there are no jobs, limited services, and weak infrastructure. Public infrastructure is deteriorating. Roads are cracked and uneven. Drainage systems fail during storms. Street lighting is inconsistent. City maintenance budgets are stretched thin, meaning problems linger far longer than they should. Employment opportunities are limited and low-paying. Manufacturing never returned at scale. Service jobs dominate, offering little stability or upward mobility. Many residents rely on government assistance, family networks, or informal income streams just to get by. Healthcare access is another major strain. Hospital resources are limited, and specialized care often requires travel to larger cities. Preventable health issues are widespread, driven by poverty, poor nutrition, and limited access to routine medical services. Food deserts are common. Grocery stores have closed, replaced by convenience stores with limited fresh options. This worsens health outcomes and increases household expenses for those who must travel farther for basic necessities. Crime is a persistent concern, not because Pine Bluff is uniquely dangerous, but because economic stress breeds instability. Law enforcement resources are limited. Emergency response times can be slow. This further discourages outside investment. Education struggles mirror the broader decline. Schools face funding shortages, staffing challenges, and declining enrollment. Young families who can leave often do, accelerating the cycle of population loss. Pine Bluff's housing prices tell a hard truth. A $20,000 home isn't a bargain. It's a warning sign. It signals an economy that no longer supports growth, a city fighting to maintain basic services, and a future filled with uncertainty unless major investment arrives. Pine Bluff represents countless small American cities left behind, not by a single disaster, but by decades of slow economic erosion. 9. East Street, Louis, Illinois. Homes selling for $10,000 to $25,000. East St. Louis is one of the most extreme examples of urban collapse in modern American history. Once a booming industrial city tied to railroads, manufacturing, and river trade, it has been hollowed out to the point where entire neighborhoods no longer function as communities. At its peak, East St. Louis had over 80,000 residents. Today, fewer than 20,000 remain. That population loss didn't happen overnight. It was the result of decades of factory closures, white flight, political corruption, and chronic disinvestment. When industry left, jobs disappeared. When jobs disappeared, families followed. Housing prices here are among the lowest in the nation. Homes sell for $23,000 or less because demand is almost non-existent. Many properties are abandoned, burned, or structurally unsound. Some streets have only one or two occupied homes surrounded by empty lots and collapsed buildings. Infrastructure is in a constant state of failure. Roads are riddled with potholes. Sidewalks crumble. Storm drainage systems back up during heavy rain, leading to flooding. Streetlights don't consistently work, leaving neighborhoods dark at night. Public services are severely strained. With such a small tax base, the city struggles to fund basic operations. Police and fire departments are understaffed. Emergency response times are slow. Residents often rely on neighboring jurisdictions for help. Water and sewer systems are aging and poorly maintained. Boil advisories and service disruptions aren't uncommon. These issues further discourage new residents or investors from taking a chance on the city. Healthcare access is limited. Hospitals closed or relocated years ago. Many residents must travel long distances for care, which is difficult for those without reliable transportation. Chronic illnesses, mental health issues, and substance abuse are widespread, driven by poverty and stress. Education systems face similar challenges. Schools have closed or consolidated as enrollment dropped. Funding shortages limit resources, staffing, and student support. Families with options leave, further shrinking the city. Crime is not the root cause of East St. Louis's collapse. It's the result. When economic opportunity vanishes, instability fills the vacuum. While crime rates fluctuate, the perception alone keeps housing demand near zero. A $15,000 home in East St. Louis doesn't represent affordability. It represents abandonment. Without massive, sustained intervention, the city remains trapped in a cycle of decline that housing prices simply reflect. 10. Deming, New Mexico. Homes selling for $20,000 to $30,000. Deming, New Mexico doesn't fit the classic Rust Belt collapse story. Instead, it represents another version of third world conditions in America. Geographic isolation, combined with economic stagnation and failing infrastructure. Located in southern New Mexico, Deming once benefited from railroads, agriculture, and small-scale manufacturing. Over time, automation, consolidation, and population shifts stripped away those advantages. What remains is a town struggling to sustain itself. Homes sell for $23,000 here, not because they're charming desert bargains, but because demand is thin and risk is high. Population growth is stagnant, job creation is weak, outside investment is minimal, infrastructure problems are persistent. Roads are worn down and poorly maintained. Water scarcity is a growing concern in the region, placing long-term pressure on development and livability. Aging water systems require repairs the city can barely afford. Healthcare access is limited. Medical facilities are small and understaffed. Specialized care requires travel to larger cities hours away. For elderly residents or those with chronic conditions, this creates serious hardship. Employment opportunities are scarce and low-paying. Agriculture jobs fluctuate seasonally. Retail and service positions dominate, offering little stability or growth. Younger residents often leave after high school, draining the town of future workforce potential. Housing conditions vary widely. Some homes are modest but livable. Others are severely deteriorated, lacking proper insulation or modern utilities. Desert heat makes poor housing conditions even more dangerous, especially for vulnerable populations. Food access is another challenge. Grocery options are limited, and prices are high due to transportation costs. Food insecurity is a real issue for many households. Deming also faces social strain. Poverty rates are high. Substance abuse and mental health challenges are common, with limited local resources available to address them. Social services are stretched thin. Deming's isolation magnifies every problem. When infrastructure fails, help isn't nearby. When jobs disappear, alternatives are hours away. When housing prices collapse, there's no wave of new buyers waiting to step in. A $23,000 home in Deming reflects more than market weakness. It reflects a town struggling to maintain basic standards of modern living. What you've just seen isn't a ranking for shock value. These towns exist right now, inside the United States, and they're not isolated cases. They're warning signs. When housing prices collapse to $23,000, it's not because homes are suddenly affordable. It's because systems failed, jobs vanished, infrastructure decayed, investment stopped. And once a town falls into that spiral, climbing back out becomes nearly impossible. The uncomfortable truth is this: many of these places were once thriving. They had industries, middle-class families, and functioning communities. The collapse didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly. One factory closure at a time, one hospital shutdown at a time, one budget cut after another. And by the time national headlines noticed, it was already too late. This matters even if you don't live in any of these towns, because the same pressures, deindustrialization, population loss, infrastructure neglect, rising costs, and weak local economies, are spreading. What looks unthinkable today can become normal within a decade, and housing prices are always the first signal. When values crash this hard, it's the market screaming that something is broken. If you're a homeowner, investor, or someone planning where to live next, you cannot afford to ignore these patterns. Cheap houses are not bargains when opportunity is gone. Low prices don't mean low risk. They mean the cost is being paid somewhere else, through poor services, limited healthcare, unstable economies, and shrinking futures. Now, if this video opened your eyes, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this kind of content matters. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss upcoming breakdowns on housing markets, migration trends, and cities most people aren't watching until it's too late. Share this video with someone who thinks cheap real estate is always a good deal, and drop a comment below. Which town shocked you the most, and which one do you think could be next? The housing market doesn't collapse all at once. It collapses quietly, town by town. Stay informed, stay ahead, and we'll see you in the next video.